Welcome to Leaders and Learners. My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of public relations and leadership. Join us as we talk to organizational leaders, elected officials, experts, authors, artists, and personalities, sharing their stories, talking about how they got to where they are and how they continue to learn and lead the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Greetings, good people out there. Glad to see you again for another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. These are people that continue to learn about the profession that they're in and share their experience with others. They share their knowledge with others, and they are open to knowing that they don't know everything. They continue to learn from the people that they serve and that they're around. I'm happy today to have someone that I'm learning a lot from since I've been in this community. I've heard a lot about, but I've never had the opportunity to actually interview him. And this is his last term as the city treasurer of Redondo Beach. So you get to learn just like I do at the same time. I'm so excited. We get to share this experience together. Remember, if you have questions for this amazing person, you can enter them in the comments and he'll be happy to answer them as we go through this day. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Steve Diels, our Redondo Beach City Treasurer. Hello, Steve.
Hello, and I love your intro. I love the idea and the concept of learning. One of the things I did learn in this my time on city council and working with the public is that you do come across people who are know-it-alls. And I finally realized what a know-it-all is. And it is literally someone who knows all they're ever going to know. And it really means that. And they have literally stopped learning. So the process of learning does require an open mind. It does require unlearning things you think you know, that somehow somebody gets the thought inside your head and makes you realize, well, maybe what you know is wrong. And you need to relearn things. So very fascinating concept. And I love your intro.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've learned a lot just since I've been here in Redondo Beach. It's been almost 10 years now. I learned things that I wasn't even curious about until, situations took place. And then I get curious about how did we get here, whether it's good or bad, because when you are in leadership, you want to know how to win. You want to know how to win, not just for yourself, but for the people around you, One of the people around you, your wife, Elizabeth, I love her. And a man with an amazing wife is, there's a lot to be said about that. But I just wanted to let you know, I think she's amazing. So you must be at least half that. With that being said, I want you to tell the people a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how did you get here?
Well, I'm a LA native. I'm a Valley dude. Moved to the beach, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. How I got into local politics was very interesting. When I was a kid, I'm actually kind of old now. When I was a kid, growing up in the Valley, I remember a van going by for Mayor Sam Yorty with a big bullhorn on it, vote for Sam. And I just thought that government was so remote and far away, because when you live in the Valley as little kids, you don't go downtown much. You don't know much about government. Then after college, I lived in Aspen, Colorado for a little while. And that's where you could see your mayor in the library, just hanging out. And I realized how close government could be. Then I came back to California and moved to the beach and started my business. And I, sometimes needed help with the local city offices. And I was asking for some help. And I guess I had a complaint about something, a city service. And I was told at the desk that if I didn't like it, I could just move. And I thought, wow, I can't just move. I live here and I'm invested here. And so I got involved. I said I could do more than that. And I was involved with the city chamber at the time. I'd been through Leadership Redondo. I was actually the treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce at that time. And then I had my own business here in Redondo, and then I ran for city council, and that was over 18 years ago. And so the rest is history. Had my family, started my family, and it's been quite a journey.
What on earth made you think that you could run for office and win? What was so audacious about you that you felt, I can do this, I can get this done?
Well, at the time, there was only one person running for the office, and I just felt like democracy wasn't going to be served unless somebody else ran. And so people around me said, "Oh, you'd be great. You should do this. Go for it." And I said, "Oh, okay." So they kind of actually, frankly, boosted my ego a bit. And then once I got into it, I really realized I didn't know what I was doing. So I asked a lot of people for help. Back to your learning concept, and I had a lot to learn. And the process of running for office in Redondo is, if you want to run, you got to walk. And that means you walk and knock on doors and meet your constituents or your potential constituents, but really you're meeting your neighbors and your community. And that is an amazing process. You literally cold call people. You walk up to their door, knock on their door, and say, "Hey, I'm doing this. I'm running for city council. This is what I stand for. Will you support me?" And I didn't know if I could win or not, but I thought I could win. I mean, that's why I was involved, but I didn't know if I would win or not. I was new to the scene. Nobody knew me, even though I had lived here many years and had a business and was involved in all kinds of civic activities. But for the people that were accustomed to the political circles, I was a newcomer. So nobody thought I could win. And that was motivating in and of itself. So I got help. I had somebody volunteered to be my campaign manager, and knocked on a lot of doors and put out some mailers and got some signs up, and didn't get any city endorsements, like from the police union or the fire union. And they were out literally knocking on doors for my opponent. That was very interesting. And anyhow,
Actually.
yeah. So I just went for it, and by a very narrow margin came from behind. I got a much later start than my opponent, who, by the way, is probably the classiest of my opponents I had run against. A wonderful guy. And
Who was that?
Lee Fink at the time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, wonderful guy, and
Is
very,
he
very
still
classy
here?
guy. And we had good debates and everything. No, he moved out of state. He's an attorney, and he got involved in politics. And I think he even worked for the Clinton campaign or something. I don't know the details, but he and I we were Dodger fans. And
Unfortunately. So listen.
sorry about that.
So listen, I want you to comment on this. Local government, something I've learned. When you're talking about local government, I think Democrat and Republican matter less. The party that you claim matters less in local politics than it does anywhere else. Hence, showing how important it is to be of service to your neighbors, to your constituents, to your community. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes. So at a small city level, I think at a big city level, it becomes more partisan. But at a small city level like ours, and like the other 87 cities in LA County, there's one big city in LA County, which is LA. But most of the other cities, I mean, we are nonpartisan, and the partisanship, it just doesn't come into play. I mean, the thing about local politics is it's really what affects your day-to-day life the most. So if there's a problem on your street with a pothole or something, it's your city. If you call the cops, who's going to show up? It's your city. If a tree falls down, across your street, or there's maybe a power line problem, you're going to call your city. School districts is another form of government. Water districts are another form of government, and they are all local. So there's more than just city politics to be involved in local government. But it's so important at that level, and some of the best colleagues I've had on the city council have been, I mean, not of my party. It just doesn't matter. You're working together to get things done, and ideally, I can talk to more about that. People who are very political in the office get confused about what really productivity is and policy, really what policy is, and instead of being productive and being involved in creating good policy, they're just political, and just by creating fights and activity, and therefore they're busy, and they're busy because they're in fights all the time, and they're really getting nothing done, but they think they are. So they really don't know what the role is as a policymaker.
That explains a
You're on.
lot. That explains a
Yeah.
lot. What do you do as a treasurer? What is your job? What do you do? What do you not do that people think you do?
Okay, so the treasurer, so it's different. So, well, okay, I can take a step back. If I go astray, you might want to get me back on track. But there are two kinds of cities. There's general law cities, which follow um, the process and structure set forth in the California Constitution. And then there are independent cities, or charter cities, and we're a charter city, so we get to make our own rules. And so we actually elect 3 department heads in our city, which is different than many cities, most different than most cities in the state. And so the treasurer is one of the elected positions, as is the city attorney and as is the city clerk. In addition to that, of course, you vote for your city council member and the mayor. Now, of those, we have 5 city council members, but we have 4 other elected positions that are citywide. The council members are by district, so 1 through 5, and the other positions. Well, the mayor then is at large, so the whole city votes for the mayor, and the whole city votes for the treasurer, the clerk, and the city attorney. And that's based on our charter. And we have, some people call it, and I think it's a good way to put it, we have, for a small city, we have a big city charter. So the treasurer is voted for citywide, and the treasurer's job at this point, it's changed quite a bit. Again, we even changed it while I was on the city council. But then I also got a measure passed to change the position even more so. But basically, the job is to be you're a resident, you're an independent overseer of the city's finances. And specifically, the treasurer is involved in the city's revenues, not on the spending side. So the policymakers decide how to spend the city's money, and that's through the budget process. And the city treasurer is responsible for receiving the revenues of the city and investing those surplus revenues to mature when you need the cash. So it's that process we call safety, liquidity, yield. So safety first, you want to protect the city's money. And then you want to have it available when the city needs it, that's liquidity. And then thirdly is yield. You want to earn as much revenue you can within the confines of the city's investment policy, state law, and also the city council's, the policymakers' appetite for risk.
How's the city doing right now financially?
I see storm clouds on the horizon. But that said, day to day, we've been doing well. The city's portfolio, when I started, was $80 million, and now it's 118. So it's been growing. We got through the pandemic. We've been through a couple of recessions. But when you compare our city to neighboring cities that have renewed their economic engines, and ours has really been in decay with a lot of empty promises about what going to happen at the waterfront and what's going to happen with the power plant. And so I mean, potentially, we could have some zoning rammed down our throats because of the policies, frankly, of the mayor and majority council. So,
Ooh, hold that
it's
thought.
been okay. We've been getting along.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
In the case that there's some zoning that gets rammed down your throat, down the city's throat, financially though, even though folks won't be too happy about that, how would that benefit or destroy the city's finances? In the case that some of this went through.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't answer that without modeling it. And there really hasn't been a model because we don't know what's going to happen. So proper zoning, you balance residential and commercial and recreation and all of the services that go along with it. The state government at the Sacramento is not your best designer of policies for your individual city ever, never, ever, ever, never. And so if they say that, well, we have a housing problem and you need to have thousands and thousands of units at the power plant site. Well, how do we balance that with the services that are required, with the impact on the school district, with the commercial infrastructure that's required to serve those people, with traffic impacts and everything else. So you have to model it before you decide. I can give you an example of planning that was done while I was on the council. This was really a great opportunity when we put the hotel development in, basically up there by the old pitch and putt or whatever, the old miniature golf and batting cages next to the freeway. Now we've got 3 hotels that are performing extremely well, and hoteliers said, we think this will work. And consequently, when we put it in, it worked. You believe the study. Well, there's not probably going to be a study if somebody just rams zoning down our throats. So you can't exactly answer it. But putting demands on resources, if you have more people, it requires more policing. If you have more young people, it requires more schooling. So they're definitely in the city. And there's 2 things when people talk about the city. There's the city of Redondo Beach, all the people in it, and the economic viability of the city. But then there's the city organization, the municipality, the municipal government, the city, and those 2 things, you want working together. So there would be an impact. I can't say exactly what it would be without having to model it.
Paul wants to know which revenues have dropped and which have increased.
So our sales taxes have been decreasing. Property taxes have been increasing. So property values are going up, despite the fact that we have Prop 13 protections. It's been good, but there's been turnover in properties. And when that happens, the values reset and our revenues increase. And then sales taxes and utility users taxes have been strained by changes in the dynamics of sales, internet sales, and also different kinds of technologies bringing video services into people's homes.
He goes on to say, if the city council treats hotels and Todd as a limitless piggy bank, they will price our hotels out of business. Comment on that.
As stated, yes, that's exactly what would happen. I'm not sure that is happening, but yeah, I mean, if you burden, well, okay, they're extreme. So the city of Ojai, this is super interesting. They have one main hotel there, the Ojai, is it Ojai Valley Inn? But it's a resort and hotel there, and they were so dependent on that when they had a fire and they had to do some remodeling, and then the hotel shut down for over a year, the city almost went bankrupt. So you do have to be careful. It's not just that you depend on hotels and drive them away. It's that you don't want to become over dependent on any one sector. So the hotels are wonderful, and they should be encouraged, and they are. I think they are encouraged to some degree. And but we've got opportunity for more. I mean, we've got a great potential. Unfortunately, it's just not being achieved. But
Yeah.
the hotels
Well,
are extremely important in our city's revenues.
Will Lee says we're robbing Peter to pay Paul for all these cost overruns on CIP projects. Thoughts?
Uh, well, CIP. So that is important. That, that's those are that's the infrastructure that. So this is going back 18 years. We redid our storm drains. This is not anything I did. It was just happened before I got elected, and it right when I got elected, we had heavy rains that year, and everything worked beautifully. And so right now we don't have flooding in certain areas of town like we used to. So CIP, those are important. I mean, that really is our infrastructure. So I'm not sure which cost overruns the questioner is referring to, but what I will say is delays in getting things done. So when Measure G passed to work on the waterfront, revitalize it, we were in one of our recessions. I think that was back in the tech recession. I'm not sure. But costs were way down to get things done. Materials costs were down. The cost of money was down. And the cost of labor was down because it was a recession. There were a lot of people out of work. We could have gotten so much done for pennies on the dollar. So in terms of, and this might be what the questioner is talking about, when you take too long to get things done, especially in an inflationary environment, you're going to run into higher and higher costs. And then there's always an opportunity cost, which is, the more you spend on one thing, you can't spend on something else. So delays are problematic in an inflationary environment.
Yeah. Paul continues to say, ask, is property tax the majority of the revenue now? And is this because of diminishing sales tax revenue? So where does the majority of the revenue come from in the city?
I don't have my pie chart in front of me. It's our single biggest. If it's not the majority, it's certainly the biggest revenue source, and it does grow. But we do need to balance that with growth on the sales tax side. There should be, I guess, the revitalization of the Galleria should be happening. That'll help, but there'll be some time in between during that revitalization where we're not getting revenues during the process. So,
Yeah. Erica,
but property taxes are still good. And
wow. Erica says, we're so contentious. We should have tons of revenue if we had a pier worth anything. Instead, we're building non-revenue stuff like skateboard parks and it's never going to happen. The boat ramp, which will be used by no one. What are your thoughts on that?
well, there's a saying, vision without a budget is hallucination.
Mm,
So there's a lot of that people are envisioning something in that water. Meantime, there's another thing. Change happens, and if you do nothing, change happens to you. So the is planning, city planning, and planning ahead and change. And in the meantime, what basically it's done, they slapped a coat of paint on the waterfront, and environmentally not healthy there. We get that sheet water runoff that brings all kinds of bacteria into the harbor. All that stuff needs to be revitalized. That requires a lot of money. It requires systems in place. I, I, I got to tell you, I think that Bill Brand, the Mayor Brand, is the most failed mayor, most failed person I've ever seen in my life. And in terms of getting literally more than nothing done, we've just seen decay. And then what do we have? We have a festival, Beach Life Festival down there a couple of times. I mean, but nothing's getting fixed. The pollution's getting worse. Everything's getting more expensive to complete. I could go on and on, but yeah, it's contentious. And unfortunately, I mean, I think in his mind, he's successful because he really seems to want nothing done. And so in that regard, in his mind, he's successful. But in terms of building something for the community and building something that's environmentally friendly, it's been a failure.
I have two questions that are kind of similar, and if you could lean into those, that would be great. How much have we paid in lawsuits due to the people that don't want anything done? And I think the same, do lawsuits hurt our economy or help our economy?
Well, I don't know how much exactly has been spent on lawsuits because a lot of it's
Kind of cutting in and out, Steve.
budget. If we're going to get to talking about that, and it costs the city, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars. It's very expensive, and the city brings in outside counsel and all this. But there's the cost of litigation, but then there's the cost of quote unquote losing. And so the city of Redondo Beach has been involved in lawsuits with its own residents and with the backing of the mayor, which is unbelievable. And that, I think, over $1 million has been paid out to basically building a better Redondo BBR is what it was, and that's through Jim Light. And he and Bill Brand are like best buddies. And then Jim Light works with Frank Angel, their attorney. And if you follow the money and you look at who the checks have been written to, it's Jim Light and Frank Angels. We have a resident of Redondo Beach who's been sort of money, it appears, because the checks have been written to him. I mean, that's public knowledge. You can get a copy of the check. So they're expensive, they're time consuming, and they're designed to cause delays and to put up roadblocks. And those are the kinds of tasks involved to stop really any forward revitalization of the waterfront, frankly. So yeah, they're expensive. And again, it goes back to the concept of opportunity cost, because the money that gets spent on these lawsuits and the money that gets paid out when you, and I say quote unquote lose, what happens, the city can win 7 out of 8 counts, but on the one count that they side with basically the mayor's colleagues, then the city has to write whatever the court tells the city, whatever the judgment is, and it can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, even though the city won the vast majority of the case. So
Hey, does that money
but that's our system.
come from does that money come from our general funds, or is there an insurance policy it comes from? I'm asking because even with, let's say, the $1 million that has been awarded, is that something that could have been gone to repairs at the pier or helping Artesia Boulevard? Like, speak to the city, the residents, in a way that lets them know this money, the lawsuits that have been lost, is that something that could have been applied somewhere where residents, other than the two friends, could have benefited from? Did I lose Steve?
Okay. Well, yes, I got you. So it depends on where the lawsuit is. So if it deals with the waterfront and it deals with being within the coastal zone, then some harbor tidelands funds might be spent on it, and that's money that could have been spent on revitalization waterfront. And if it's not part of the waterfront and it comes from the general fund, yeah, that's money that gets spent on, could be spent on anything, including, public safety, police, advocate for open space, and nobody doesn't, for the most part. I mean, nobody doesn't want open space, but nobody else is removing funds from the city to actually prevent the open space they claim they want. And so, yeah, you could set aside general fund monies to purchase land for open space, but instead it's getting spent on lost attorneys and friends of the mayor.
It's all interesting. Paul wants to know if you will seek another elected office.
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty much retiring from local politics. So
I had Matt Kilroy on the show a couple weeks ago. We talked about his desire to take your place when you're done. I want you to tell me your thoughts on him and his ability to be able to do a good job or not at being the city treasurer.
I like Matt. So I would say, though, there's certain check boxes I see that the job is appropriate to be held by people with certain qualities. And I would say there's integrity, number one, independence, because you really need to be an independent overseer of the city's finances and a good representative of the public, and intellect. So that's kind of my checkbox for this. And anybody that meets those things, there are only two people in the race. It's easy for me to say he's the right guy. I mean, he's got a strong background in public service. He's very intelligent, so he's got that box checked. The experience he's got is with this. He's actually worked with the city budget, as a city council member, so he's familiar with it. Yeah. So, and I mean, integrity wise, yeah. So if I look at the two candidates now, if there were somebody else, I would be fair. I mean, yeah. I would say make your pick among the people with those qualities. But I think there's only one person.
Now, what about his opponent? What
qualities?
What about his opponent? What are your thoughts on him?
Well, again, so if I go back to those three items, the integrity, people make mistakes and they can have one-off mistakes, but when there's a pattern of behavior, it begins to look like there's an integrity problem. And I've known him, we're talking about Eugene Solomon now, dealt with him for many years and ran against him as, for the treasurer position once already. On the intellect side, on intellect, you need a basic understanding of finance, and having dealt with him, he portrayed money that the treasurer's office saved, that I saved, and he advertised the city's expenses when I saved $1 million. So that indicates kind of a lack of understanding of basic city finances. So there's that. And then independence. You need to be an independent. You need to be this independently and really represent the welfare of the city. Yes, he's a roommate. I don't. He's definitely on the inside circle of the mayor. There was that. I don't know if you recall, but I'm sure you do. Actually, the mayor's emails came out. There was some very vulgar emails and very disparaging of city residents. Well, Eugene's name is all over that stuff. And there's even an example in one email where he's conspiring to mock and create memes of the mayor's wife. Unbelievable stuff. So, and it's a pattern of behavior. So it's like I said, it's one thing if he stuck his toe into something maybe and got involved with the wrong people and then pulled out and said, wow, I made a mistake. But of all the things that I've dealt with Eugene over the years, he's never apologized once.
Well,
never,
listen,
ever.
I'm going to go ahead and open the invitation to Eugene if he wants to come on. But I have been doing my research like I did with Matt before he came on and asked him a few questions about some things. But I want you to comment on a few things that I've seen. And I know that you and him had a back and forth. Well, actually, you wrote a letter. There was a judgment, and he has submitted some falsehoods to City Council. So let's talk about this. There was some passing of documents to City Council. Can you kind of comment on that? And I'm going to go ahead and share a video too, just so that the people can know and explain to the people why this kind of stuff is important, because I think many residents tend to tune out when this kind of controversial stuff starts to be put in play, because it becomes a lot of noise. But I want you to explain why something like this is important for residents to understand.
Okay, so
last
this
week,
goes
a really
to the
serious
issue
matter was brought to the attention of the council and probably dismissed without the urgency or significance necessary. Right now, the city is at risk as we have no contract in place with our investment advisory and over $86 million under advisory management. The city treasury deputy stated we have a month-to-month agreement, yet the expired agreement with FTN, now FHN, does not provide for any continuation beyond the January 31st, 2020 date. And the city treasurer is not empowered to enact such a contract for month-to-month services without a consent of the city council or their approval. No such power is vested in the municipal code, section 11.1 treasurer section. If the department did this, they could perhaps be likely or perhaps likely in violation of the city charter. We are currently in violation, I believe, of our city investment policy guidelines for reporting and competitive bidding related to the city's investment transactions. And when I leave today, I would like to please provide you the relevant sections of our city investment policy guidelines. Investment policy guidelines use words like shall, required, will, must, and yet none of these things are being done. The city council needs to take immediate action to remedy this breach of public trust and risk to city finances. The city attorney should initiate an immediate investigation and review. Last week, I was shocked by the laconic response to this egregious malpractice in allowing this contract to lapse without a replacement under conditions in violation of city investment guidelines. A feckless shoulder shrug, wiping away any accountability. How is it that we have no policy in place to avoid such a recurrence? Is there no calendar system? Is there no docket available? Some calendar system or other internal control? $86 million of investments as of 12/31/2019. And if there's some breach or malfeasance, we have no remedy under contract to address it. That is unforgivable malpractice and should not happen, and you should act. You are in place to act. How does the city manager, representative city attorney's office simply shrug their shoulders when $86 million of taxpayer funds may be at risk? The argument is, well, it's not in the municipal code. We can't challenge the bidding. Why celebrate the bare minimum? Why do you lack knowledge of investment guidelines of the required bidding? Why embrace mediocrity when so much is at stake? Enablers on the council mumble about how we have a monthly, and I think it's okay. Something out of a bad Susan Collins tutorial on how to be a sycophant. It's suggested that it should be okay because they're the cheapest. Well, how much money are we leaving on the table in investment returns? We don't know because we don't go out to bid. We don't investigate other resources. That could end up being hundreds of thousands of dollars because of this unforgivable lethargy. Simply put, this clouded reasoning is a Jedi mind trick designed to fool you into thinking these violations are not the droids you are looking for. This should not be glossed over. The gaslighting of this is a big deal, and it needs to be resolved, an investigation of what's happening and brought before the council immediately. May I please submit these to you?
Motion.
So talk us through that. It was very dramatic. So talk to us.
All right. So that was unbelievable. So he, at the time, was the chairman of the Budget and Finance Commission. And so he gets presentations regularly from the city treasurer. And we annually review the city's investment policy, and it gets approved and maybe edited and then approved by the city council. So we always have a current approved investment policy. And as the city treasurer, we present the policy to the Budget and Finance Commission. So he gets the actual policies presented to him. So unfortunately, look, this guy Eugene's a bully. Okay, he likes to play gotcha, and he's always looking for a chance to pick on other people to try to inflate his own ego. I've been dealing with this for a long time. I've seen it. So what he's doing there is he's correct about one item, which is at that time we had a contract that was in the city attorney's office in review, and we had worked it out with the vendor. In the meantime, between the time that it expired, which was, I don't know, days or weeks before, I don't know, and then we were in the process of renewing it, they continued to provide service for us. So now he's conflating that with something else altogether, completely different. And again, this is what I'm talking about, integrity and intellect, that he doesn't know the difference between like these roles. So competitive bidding, he would say, he's confusing it with when we actually bid on an investment, who are we buying it from, versus competitive bidding for a service provider. So we're very happy with our service provider. They by far are the cheapest. I mean, we're saving tens of thousands, and over the years that we've had them, we've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on them. So they've been fantastic vendors, and because Eugene doesn't like me, he doesn't like them, and so he's trying to play gotcha. And then he uses as evidence this document that you had in that picture when you showed this video. He's handing false that right there. That is unbelievable. That is not even real information. It's from some old policy. I don't even know how old. And he removed it from the actual policy, so it's not dated. So he's telling the city council that the city treasurer is not following the document that he has in his hand. Well, of course we don't follow that, because that's not our policy. So he's claiming, now he is at the time, again, the chairman of the Budget and Finance Commission, and he should know better. So he's not learning, that's an intellect problem, or he knows what he's doing and he's doing it anyway, being just untruthful, that's an integrity problem. But yeah, that was unbelievable. So I replied the following week and basically made a number of these points to the city council to let them know that what he was telling was not true. And he also had a bone to pick because he had lied to the voters before this. And that's where he had this judgment. Look at this right here. This is a court document right there. Okay, he was served a $25,000 judgment for attorney's fees for costs that he created, that he caused. Now he had to pay his own attorneys, plus the city had to have their attorneys involved. I don't know how much the whole thing cost, but he himself was served a $25,000 judgment for literally lying to the public, which I caught. I caught the lie. I prevented that lie from getting disseminated, and even the judge said, because I did that, I saved thousands of voters from grief. So Yeah, strange, very strange. So this is a pattern of behavior. This
This right here says
behavior
Diels'
is.
motion for attorney fees is granted in the reduced total amount of $25,707.50. There is no dispute that Diels achieved a benefit from this petition. However, Diels' receipt of a benefit does not mean the benefit was limited to only himself. Here, thousands of voters benefited by Diels' petition to make sure Solomon's candidate statement was proper. The improper statement went beyond and factual inaccuracies of a candidate's occupation noted in William versus Kelly, blah, 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 all this stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, the judge is saying, yeah, you benefited, but the community benefited more based on the fact that he was being dishonest. Is that right?
Yes. So yeah, and therefore he has to pay attorney's fees. So he's saying I shouldn't have to pay attorney's fees because Diels benefited. Well, the benefit I got, I didn't get the money. All I got was that I had to force him to change his candidate statement. That was the benefit I got, and the benefit that benefit passed through to the voters because they were not subject to his untruths.
All right,
And
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Let me go back to this dog and pony show in the chambers a couple weeks ago when they were trying to get rid of Christian Harbath. It was about his dwellings and where he lived and where his wife lived, and they asked him some incredibly disgusting questions. Does he have a restraining order against him? Anybody in his family put a restraining order against him? It was nasty. It was pretty nasty. So all of that because he has multiple residences. One he owns, one he's renting out. He's staying in the one he's renting out. No one else's business really. But then this pops up, right? And he's running, but I guess he lives with Niels. So I want you to talk about this more or less because you were talking about independence. So can the treasurer really be independent from the council making independent decisions if he so then lives with one of them? And is that really his residence, or is he just staying there to run?
Yeah, well, actually, so keep that picture up there. Isn't it ironic? Look at the picture that's next to that. So at one, he's saying he lives at Nils' house. Okay, with a council member. Okay, so how could he be independent? But if you look at the picture, he's in the mountains somewhere with his dog. So that's not Nils' house. You know that there's no mountains like that in Redondo. So why would he be taking a campaign picture with his dog in the mountains? So it strains credulity to think that a grown man and his dog and all his stuff that he's acquired over his lifespan lives in a room at Nils' house.
Did someone ask him if he was still married or if his wife has a restraining order against him?
Well, okay. So I will go so far as to say this. In my experience in dealing with Nils and his colleagues, they frequently accuse others of their own behavior. So it's projection, yes, but it's more so. It's literally telling others what they're doing. So when Nils was harboring Mr. Solomon, claiming that Solomon lives at his house after apparently, I don't know, a breakup or a divorce or something, but Solomon sold his house. He used to live in district, I don't know where it was, somewhere on Juanita or something. He sold his house back in, I don't know, 2020 or 2022. I don't know. I don't know the details, but he sold his house. So then evidently, and then I guess his wife moved out of state or something. And then or ex-wife, I don't know. And then he's apparently living at Nils' house. So all the questions that Nils was asking of Christian Horvath, it sounded like he had just gone through all of that with Solomon. So he had an actual breakup. I don't know if there was a restraining order. I mean, I don't know where those questions came from. But
they were asking Christian about a house that he still owns. I don't know.
Yes. Okay. Right. And meanwhile, he's got this candidate, for living at his house, supposedly. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But
I don't know. Actually, I don't even care. It's just really strange that This is the rabbit hole that they sent the whole city through, including the mayor calling a meeting that he didn't show up to try to throw Christian out over the same thing that Solomon is really doing. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Let's leave that
There
alone.
you go.
Okay. I have some
Something
more
like that.
questions. I got some questions.
Okay.
So what is this? I found this. What is this? Violated
Okay, so-
election law by
okay.
attacks on opponents, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so that pertains to the court document that we discussed. So he had a couple of lies in that where he was literally attacking his opponent. At that time, it was me. So again, this goes back to that combination of intellect and integrity issue where the rules of running for office are very straightforward and it's autobiographical. You're supposed to write about yourself and why you vote for me. This is who I am and these are my qualifications, vote for me. Instead, he attacks me in his statement. And that statement gets printed with government funds and mailed out as a government document to all of these people in the city under the way the election rules work. And you're not allowed to do that. So of course I had to call him out on that. And all the guy had to do was change it. Just change it. It's not right. Okay. And then he was advised to change it and he wouldn't do it. And so that was part of the process that we had to take him to court to abide by the law. That's all we're asking him to do. Just abide by the law. He wouldn't do it. We had to take him to court. And that was part of that $25,000 judgment. And there were two lies in it. One was the attack and the other was the just absolute fraudulent representation of the city treasurer's budget that he said, when I saved the city $1 million, he said, I tripled the budget. I tripled the expenses after saving the money. Unbelievable. Lack of understanding or lack of integrity.
Yeah, that's this last one. So listen, you did something that a lot of people don't want to do because it takes time and it takes money. You went through the legal process to get him to fix his lies, or at least let the public know that he was not being honest. But that takes time and that takes effort and it takes money. And not everybody always has that available to fight these fights. So from someone that has sat in a fiduciary seat, talk really quick again, just to kind of wrap your arms around it, the financial, I don't know, kind of the financial issues that we are having in this city in regards to, one, not producing enough revenue. Two, what could someone that sits in your seat, how could they either benefit or do more damage to what's going on? Why this is important. And I want you to talk about, I know that was a lot, but I want you to also talk about your wins since you have been the treasurer of Redondo.
Well, yeah, that's a lot to unpack. So the treasurer has the importance of being independent, which leads back to your prior question, is really to be in a position to see what's going on and to let the public know that something's amiss. That's a big role, and that's the independence part that obviously Solomon doesn't have. The wins that I have had as treasurer, I reformed I reformed the office. So going back to when I was on the city council, the city treasurer earned $152,000 a year plus benefits. It was quite a big salary, and it was automatically increasing every year based on COLA requirements. And at the time, we had at the city council, and I believe Matt Kilroy was part of this. So he was part of the beginning of the reformation of the city treasurer's office. And over the objections of the then city treasurer, understandable objections, but and I'm friendly with these people. It was hard to do, but we had to take the tack that no, this job is getting too expensive. And at the time, interest rates were falling, and expenses were increasing, and the city treasurer was about to earn less money as a department that it was costing just to have the treasurer. So we, as a council, reduced the salary from $152,000 down to $118,000. And it was still at the time a mandated full-time job. So you couldn't go down much below that for a department head and it be a full-time job because it was illegal to have another job according to the charter. So then after that, not too long after that, the city treasurer was reelected to the new salary. And then when he was in that term, he got through the halfway point, and then he decided to resign. And so the job opened up. And so I ran for the job. So we had an interim city treasurer, and then I ran for the job after that. Now the treasurer job was, at this point, it was $118,000, and it was required according to the city charter to be full-time. Now I have a full-time job. I have my business to run. So I ran for the city treasurer position. I could not go to work. I won on the basis that I was going to reform the office and reduce the salary even further and make it a part-time job, which seemed appropriate at the time, and it still does. So I ran on that basis. I won. And by the way, I did have some interesting opponents there. And one in particular was quite a classy person, so that was good. I told you that I had one classy, but I did have another classy opponent, and Chris Cagle, a former colleague on the council, great guy. And he had the opposite. He took the opposite take, that the job should be expanded because the way that it's written into the charter, it's a big job and it should be fully restored. So we had opposite opinions, and it was a really good debate. It was a good public debate about which way to go. So the public decided to go my way, and then so I had a runoff with another opponent, and ended up with the job. So now I have to finish the term of the other treasurer, and I had to work it full time. It was a requirement. So I did. So I worked full time. I worked very hard to make the job easy. And then I lobbied with the city council at the time to reduce the salary to $25,000, which they agreed to. And now that would only take place in the next, with the next election, because for political purposes, you can't just change an elected official's salary in the middle of a term. So they agreed to set the salary to $25,000. So that was going to reduce from 118 to 25. And then in order to get the charter changed, I had to get on the ballot a charter measure changed that hopefully the people of Redondo would agree to remove the full-time requirement of the job. So now it's not paying $118,000; it's only paying $25,000. It makes sense to make it a part-time job. Unfortunately, they agreed, because at the same time I had to run for the office again. So I'm running for the office to get the new salary of $25,000, and hopefully to have the full-time requirement removed by the voters. So that way I wouldn't be stuck with a full-time job for $25,000. And fortunately they agreed. And at that point I was like, whew, I could go back to work and still do this job. And since then it's reformed, and it still has the oversight. We also added the auditing to it. We added best practices. We have that incredibly gracious vendor that I was referring to before that helps us with our investing. We still have oversight with the Budget and Finance Commission, which is a best practice. Unfortunately, they have some ethical issues to deal with, because Eugene Solomon is one of their members with ethical issues, and I think he's really diminished their reputation. But nevertheless, we have made edits to the investment policy, and we've helped the portfolio expand from 80 million to 118 million. So
congratulations.
It's been a good, thank you. It's been a good run.
Congratulations. With your wins, I also want to hear, what's one of your epic fails in this position, and what did you learn from it?
Let's see. I would say, I know I'm ready to retire because I should have been more involved in these ballot measures that are out. The lack of opinions that are on the opposition to these ballot measures. I should have been there. I think that's an epic fail. I should have explained what those things meant, and there should be some opposition to some of those things. I am opposed to the marijuana issue because I don't think it taxes enough. And they're setting it a very low threshold. And the reason they're doing it is because that's what other cities are doing. And I just don't think that's enough. So there's that, I think, is a failure on my part. I should, but that's how I know I'm ready to retire, because I've just
didn't have the energy for it.
Yeah, I'm ready to hand off the mantle.
One more question for you. What is your view on the future of Redondo? How can Redondo residents ensure a bright future, in your opinion?
Well, one thing I've noticed is that people conflate national politics with local politics. And you talked about partisanship early on when we started the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And local politics are different, and people have to get away from applying what they think about the national government to their local government. And people need to get involved. And people will swear, I vote in every election, and they believe it, and they have never voted in a local election. So they've only voted in national ones. They think that because they voted in every presidential election, they vote in every election. So for the future of Redondo, the people need to be more involved, frankly. The residents need to be more involved. Now, we have a representative form of government, so they don't have to do all the work, fortunately, because you vote for the residents to help set the policy that's going to be good for the city. But they do have to get involved enough to find out more about these candidates that are running, who they are, what they represent. Redondo Beach has tremendous potential, and it always will. It'd be best if we capitalized on some of that potential and cleaned up our waterfront. So, I mean, the future is bright. I don't know. As times change, we have to figure out how to get things done. We could have done a lot more for a lot less money if we had already gotten things done. But we have a vibrant community. As hostile as our local political battles are, it does represent a fairly active political base, so the community is fairly active, but there needs to be a broader understanding and participation by the public, I think would be helpful. I know some people have asked me, gosh, why do you do it? Isn't it a thankless job? And I can say from experience, I know there are some thankless people, but there are some very grateful and thankful people.
Well, you said it best. A vision without a budget is a hallucination. And I really hope that we're not hallucinating who we wind up getting in office and what they can actually get done with a budget that allows for it to get done. Last thing, I always say leadership matters. Give me your thoughts on that. How much does it really matter?
Well, because we have a representative form of government, leadership comes from a lot of different places. So again, going back to your learning, leaders have to be able to learn. So there's three ways to lead, and you lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? But you literally, if a good idea comes from the public, don't stifle it. Get out of the way. You might have had an idea, but like you talked about learning, your idea might not be the best. So leadership is really a process of listening. It's a process of listening in order to find out what the best plan of action is, and then helping set the policy to create the framework for the best outcomes. At that point, you get out of the way, because leaders who micromanage are in the way. And so the style of leadership is important. Good leaders are important. Listening is extremely important, and learning to communicate is a process. Sometimes, I know I used to joke about it, but it's true. When I was on the city council, or even as a treasurer, when I'm in public, when I am super smart and dead on, and I'm brilliant in public, there I am. I'm just brilliant in public, But when I'm wrong and maybe unprepared, or just not correct or completely mistaken or even foolish about a subject matter, well, it's right out there in public. So both things happen, and it's only human, and so it's important for leaders, people in leadership. By the way, people in leadership positions are not always leaders just because they got elected. But it's important to be able to, to brush off your
Ego.
failures, your ego, and you pick yourself up and keep it moving. And the really what's amiss right now, which is really unfortunate, is the collegiality that used to be part of the leadership group. And I mean, the hostility that comes from our quote unquote, well, I'll just call them people in leadership positions today in the city. That email scandal is unbelievable. The hostility that they exude toward the public is, I don't know. It's, I'm at a loss for words. I'm at a loss for words.
We'll find words to actually defend that. It's hard for me to watch people that can't even call wrong, right? There's a million different ways to justify wrong. To me, that is a great example of someone that's not willing to do the work to make it right. And that's scary to have people in leadership that will not even acknowledge when something is wrong, because we can't fix it if we can't even acknowledge it's something that should not be there. So I want to thank you for taking the time and chatting with us today, for really kind of letting us into how you think about things, how you've processed things over the years, and how you have been someone that has led change and continues to lead by learning. I think it says a lot about a man that is as accomplished as you, that can still say, and I've been wrong, but I've continued to learn, and I still want to help make it better. That whole energy, your low energy right now, though, for this job, I can, between you and Christian and watching what you have gone through over the years while you've tried to usher in change and just continue to get kind of pounded over the head. Yeah, I think you should go ahead and take a break, take a little vacation. I heard you might be moving, which I hope that's not true. And if you do, please stay in touch, but that's a whole different conversation. Again, I do want to thank you though, because I understand that civil service is a lot of work and it's a lot of sacrifice. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And I think Matt misspoke about me moving or something. No, I'm just retiring. I'm still in Redondo. So
good enough.
We'll
Because
see.
We need to be able to have people to go to for counsel and learn from. And since I have had the opportunity, I've learned from you, among others, and I'm grateful. That's it. I'm grateful.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Boy, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right, guys, I hope that you took a moment to learn something, definitely something that you didn't know about getting elected, about campaigning, about what it takes to win an election. Maybe if you've thought about it, it has given you kind of vision as to what you want to do next. We didn't even get into appointed positions. Well, we did. We talked about Solomon's, but that's a whole different situation. All that being said, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to learn. For those of you that tapped in, I appreciate it. Share this with some of the residents that you think might benefit from just knowing some things. You know, Steve isn't running for office anymore, so he has no reason to not be honest, to not be forthcoming. He has no reason to lead you astray, because if you listen to what he says, he's being very clear and he wants to see what's best for a city that he has sacrificed and leaned into so much, as many of us do. We have friends here. We've become friends with residents we never even knew we could connect with. So yeah, we want the place that we live, work, and play to be welcoming and wonderful for all of us. So take a moment, go through some of the things that he said, do your own research, see if, what he said is true. You don't believe it? Do some research, find out. That's all I do is research what someone said. And if it's true, it helps to kind of pound in what resonates with you. And you have to decide what's important to you also. Again, all of that he said, take it to heart. It matters. If you live here in Redondo Beach, it matters. And if you are someone that's considering elected office, it matters. So think about it. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What do you think about today's episode? And share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.